One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 1v1 with Boss Rush Games. I'm your host, Celeste Roberts of Nintendo Power Block and Another Zelda podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Jesse Douglas, co-founder of Boss Rush Games, co-host of the Boss Rush podcast, contributor on Arsenal X, the Xbox podcast, a musician. Did I leave anything out, Jesse?
No, not really. I kind of, I try to be wherever I can be. If I have like a day off or something and a show is being recorded and I can join them, I'll try to. But yeah, that's pretty rare. So, but yeah, you used to be on Pow Block when we did it on the weekends. But I just kind of, I'll be honest, I don't get on my Switch as much as I'd like these days, so it really didn't fit for me to still be on that show because I honestly don't have a whole lot to talk about. So
I understand. It's hard whenever you get older to find time to sit down and concentrate on a video game.
Yeah, and lately, the kids have swimming and karate class, and I've actually been just playing the xCloud on my phone while I'm waiting for them to be done. So I've been getting a lot of use out of that lately. So.
Oh, that's awesome! Isn't technology great? You can do that on your phone.
Yeah, it's been pretty nice.
Well, what are some of your earliest memories of video games? I'd love to know what got you into video games, what got you started, maybe what systems or games you remember.
Yeah, so actually my grandparents are pretty much are 100% to blame, I guess you could say, for my love of games, because my grandpa he both of them now have passed away, but they like my grandpa was a very big adapter of technology and stuff. So he actually, when I was, I think I was like 4 or 5 when I got my first console. He had gone to some, I don't know if it was just a rummage sale or what it was exactly, but he had went somewhere and he bought just a whole box of all different old school consoles. Box full of them. I think he had like 3 or 4 Ataris in it and a ColecoVision. And so he let me take one of the ColecoVisions, or the Ataris and the ColecoVision home for myself. And so I would play on those a lot. And actually, before I had gotten those, I have some vague memories of playing stuff in the arcades. And one of my very first early memories is my sister had to go to a big hospital in one of the bigger cities outside of where we live, to go to the child hospital because she had to get her tonsils removed. It was like a emergency thing because it was like blocking her ability to breathe and stuff. They were actually so inflamed and something was wrong. So she had to go to the hospital, and we stayed at a Ronald McDonald Inn, which usually they're linked to hospitals, and then it gives you kind of a fun place for families to stay. And so there they had a big arcade there that was just absolutely free. You just press start and you could play whatever. And one of my favorite games at that arcade was the Popeye arcade game. And it was one of those where it just looks like a little table that you sit at, and then it's just a flat surface and a screen on it, and then you look down into the table and you're playing it while you're sitting at it like a regular table. And I just remember just absolutely loving that game. And then later down the line, when my grandpa gave me those consoles, one of the games that he had for the ColecoVision was that Popeye game, that same one that was the arcade one, which also is on NES and stuff, I believe, as well. But so yeah, so I just played that all the time, and I'm trying to think of some like Pitfall and stuff I played on Atari.
Pitfall.
I think to this day I will die by my words that that first original Pitfall is still the best Pitfall game ever made. Like,
Okay, so you think it's better than the Mayan Adventure for SNES?
yeah, I just, it was such a change.
Oh yeah.
I just didn't like the direction they went with it. There was just something about that very simplistic original version that was just perfect in my opinion. So, yeah, I never really was interested in that newer one. But yeah, like I loved like all those kinds of games during that time, and the ColecoVision was such a weird, console, like, because like the controller was basically like a big phone with like a turning knob on it, and like, you had all the numbers and stuff like on a phone. And yeah, it was a really interesting, weird, thing to own. And I think my grandpa also had one of the original Pong things, I think, was in that box as well, where it was just the
Oh,
little dock with the two controllers that would connect to it, so you could play each other.
wow, that's
So
really
yeah,
awesome.
so yeah, I got to play a lot of those very very early, like consoles that really made, kind of got the ball rolling on that kind of stuff being in the house. And then yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And then eventually, not, shortly after that, because I think it was only like a maybe that year or or maybe a year later after the Master System came out, my grandpa bought me that as well. And so then that was the console, like, that, like, at the time just blew me away how great the graphics were. And like it was just so cool having, I had the one that had Safari Hunt, and it was, I forget what it was called, like Outrunner. It was a motorcycle game similar to that Outrun game, where like in the arcade you drive and it's a car and you just had the shifter that either went forward or
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah.
Yeah, it was like that, but it was a motorcycle game, and both of those games were built into the system, because like the Master System was the first game, well, outside of Pong, the first game, like, console that had games built into it. So when you all you had to do is turn it on, and then it would this menu would pop up of those games that are built into it, and you could pick which one you wanted to play. And it came with the light gun and stuff, and so I played that a lot. Um,
So it was more
and then,
your grandpa than your parents?
yeah, my parent,
Wow,
yeah, no, yeah, well,
that's pretty
like,
cool.
yeah, and then, like, eventually in our house, like, my grandpa was the first one to get a computer for at the house, at their house and stuff. So we would always be excited to go over to, our grandparents and be able to play on the computer and play, like, like, all, because they had the DOS or whatever computers. They didn't have an Apple computer. But I did use Apple Computer in elementary school. We got to play like Oregon Trail and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and Number Munchers and all those kinds of fun games. But but yeah, like, so we did eventually too, like, get a computer, and I did a lot of computer playing games on computer for a while there too. But yeah, like, but my grandparents, I mean, like, when the Game Boy came out, they got a Game Boy for at the house, and they bought a whole bunch of games for it for us kids to play and stuff like that. And so, like, my grandparents were always like, when new technology came out, they would, my grandpa would always be interested in getting it and having it at the house, for him, but also for, for us kids as well. So yeah, we were really lucky that we had, our grandparents were early adopters of technology, so I kind of got to see a lot of that early stuff, like right when we were really little already. So,
So
but yeah,
your love of video games goes back to some of the
yeah,
OG systems. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Some of the very beginning, because yeah, I did even play that Pong game too. Sometimes if no one was there though, I'd have to, play both sides. Play
Kind of
against
like playing
myself.
tennis with yourself,
Yeah,
like
yep.
a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something.
Yeah, run from one side to the other. Yeah, it
Well,
is.
that's a way to get in shape, I would say, if you have to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You'd probably get sick of that pretty quick. But yeah, like I've always just had a blast playing video games since like I was really little. So, and throughout time, I've got I mostly I didn't really get a Nintendo system actually until like what would it have been, like the 64, I think, would have been the first Nintendo console that I actually bought, because the Master System, which was the original before it was the Sega Genesis, like that was their main console. They're like their first one. And then I kind of stuck with Sega a little bit. I got the Game Gear and then eventually Dreamcast, which is still to this day is still one of my favorite consoles of all time. Like it was just, it was great being a lover of arcade games, and that was like the console that played arcade games as, close to as how well it plays on the arcade. It basically was a one-to-one, but you being able to bring those games into your house, basically.
What were some
So,
of the games on Dreamcast that you remember loving a lot?
um, well, I I've always loved Echo the Dolphin, like that game. That I believe I had that on Dreamcast, but I mostly, honestly, around the time that the Dreamcast came out, I was playing like the Code Veronica, the Resident Evil,
Yeah.
and I was playing like the Tekken games and like fighting games and stuff I was into at that time. Crazy Taxi was like that was like that was the best way to play Crazy Taxi, was on the Dreamcast, because it was an exact replica of the arcade version. So
Oh, wow. And
yeah.
was it the Dreamcast controller or system where you could see your stats for certain
Yep,
games?
yep. It had the memory cards that had a little screens on them that were actually very similar to like Tamagotchis and stuff,
Hmm.
where there was actually certain games would load games onto that you could play on it. Because when you pulled it out, like when you put it in the controller, all you could see is the screen and the little hole that was in the controller. You could see the screen that was on it, but when you pull it out, it had a little tiny mini D-pad and then two little gray buttons. And so like yeah, some games would actually load stuff on there, and some, like, there were like a Tamagotchi type kind of thing where there was a little character thing on there that you had to take care of and things like that. So yeah,
Oh.
like it was cool. Yeah, it was I just remember like that, like that was such a big deal. Like that was such a neat, like feature to have, where you make the memory card more than just a piece of plastic you shove in it, to save something, and actually, make it functional itself, was such a neat idea. And of course, the Dreamcast was the first console to actually have a browser on it, so you could actually, surf the internet right from your console. Like to this day, I call the Dreamcast the pre-Xbox, because it was actually Microsoft helped them make that console. Like they
Oh,
ran a
yeah.
window they made a special version of Windows for that console. And so, like, that's why I think Sega and them have kind of had a decent relationship, as they kind of were there in the beginning, and then when Dreamcast kind of failed, and Sega decided to drop out of the consoles, then the Xbox came along and they adapted the Dreamcast's kind of look, and and way that it plays and everything, and they kind of took their place, and then Sega, of course, said, hey, we'll let you have some Sega exclusive games for that for the first Xbox, since they kind of had already had somewhat of a partnership.
You just
So that,
answered some questions. I've always wondered that.
yeah. So that's kind of how that happened. Is like they're like, what, we're not doing consoles anymore, but and then Microsoft was probably like, hey, like we're making our own console, and they probably were, like I said, had contact with them, and they're probably like, what, like, would we be able to, like have some of your games and release them for as exclusives, and I'm pretty sure that's how that kind of worked out, is they just were like, yeah, we're not doing consoles anymore, like why not?
That's so
And at the
cool.
yeah, and at the time the Xbox was way more powerful than the PlayStation and stuff, because they kind of came out a little bit later, and really wanted to just basically make like a PC inside of a box, and which, like, there's some things out there where you can watch and stuff where they talk about like more a deeper history of that stuff, but there's kind of a funny story behind how they made it. They literally just took computer parts that they had laying around and threw it together and made something, and said, hey, like, let's just reproduce this, and that's basically how the Xbox was made. Is they just threw some parts that they had laying around together, and they made it work.
So would you
But
say is the Xbox your favorite console, like each iteration of it?
yeah, I think the thing is like with the Xbox, being like the first console to really do like the online gaming, like on the same level as what you could do on PC, is really what kind of made me stick with them.
Hmm.
Is they've kind of been doing that long enough now, that and kind of perfected it, that like it's kind of been the way, like I nowadays, with COVID and everything too, it's even more so. But like I don't really get a chance to, or not really that I don't get a chance, but I'm not a person who's super interested in and trying to find new friends. If I make new friends, I'm completely fine with that, but
By
I'm not.
chance, right?
Yeah, I've always been where, like, I like to just have a little small group of, really close friends, and that's all I need. I don't need to, go out looking everywhere for more friends. But,
Like forcing
like,
it, kind of.
yeah, it's like you do that to get in a relationship and hopefully get married. I don't need to be doing that more than than once, hopefully.
Well,
Cross my fingers.
you have your wife, you have your
Yeah.
kids, you have
Yeah.
your family, have us.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
but it,
Exactly.
as you get older, it's harder too, because
Yeah.
you start to value quality over quantity with friends, I
Yep.
find.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, because I've had some friends that, like they're, people that I'm glad that I met, and you create, memories and things like that. But I've also had some friends that it's probably best that I didn't bring that friendship much longer than it was,
Hmm.
because I not really would have brought me in a good place, or I may have been, into, getting into things that I don't need to be getting into, and things like that. So, like, yeah, it's just nice to have people that and that kind of similar to you, and you don't need to well, one of the things that's so hard too is like when as you get older, and we were just talking about this with my sister today, is she used to live with a bunch of people, and I used to live with them, and we all would hang out. And the more friends you have, the more opportunities you have of having to be disappointed that you can't like plan something, or plans fall through. And it's like, like it's such a bummer as you get older when you don't always have the kind of time that you would love to have for to give everyone the attention, that you feel like they deserve or whatever. So in that way
Yeah.
too, sometimes it's nice not having too many friends if you already are spreading your time thin. So,
Yeah, that's a really really great point that you guys bring up. I know that my best friends that I have in my life are the kind of people where we could go a few weeks without talking just because of life,
mhm,
but we can pick up
mhm.
right where we left off.
Yep, it's the same with my best friends that I have, that I go and do stuff with. But like tonight after this, one of my friends were, it's so easy now. We can just go online and we can do stuff and talk and whatever, and and it's fine that way too, And so the Xbox is kind of, got that kind of world going pretty quickly, because at the time too, like chatting on AIM or on Yahoo
Hmm.
Messenger and all that stuff was so big, and to be able to now, not only just chat with other people around the world, but to be able to actually sit and play like full on, console games with them over the internet was such a cool thing. And so yeah, like I've just always been, that's kind of always where my heart's been, is with the Xbox stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love Nintendo and stuff too, and PlayStation, like PS1 and PS2. I put a lot of time into those consoles. Um, but Xbox has kind of always offered all the things that I needed or felt like I wanted in a console. Um, when for those times when I couldn't be together with friends in person or whatever, then we could just do it online. So,
I think that's so important for mental health in
yeah,
pre-pandemic too, but especially right now. That's how we connect to so many
yeah,
people, and it can
yeah,
be a moment of respite where we just let's focus on this game, let's have an escape from all the heaviness of 2020.
yeah, yeah. Which, some things in it have so far gotten a little better, and there's some promising news of vaccines possibly
Hmm.
coming before the end of this year. But yeah, like overall, this year it's both felt way longer than it has at times, and at the same time, it's like you think, I can't believe it's already November already. Like, where did
Yeah,
this
like
year go?
it's crazy. I blink and I think, oh my gosh, it feels like just yesterday. It was March and April, and I'm sitting out on my patio with my Switch, just getting into the Easter portion of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like that, like when people experience trauma, they just completely black it out of their mind.
Yeah,
It's like maybe it's just we've been like just all trying to not remember, and
I
that's why it seems like it never happened.
And it's a little heartbreaking with the holidays too because
Yeah.
we're so conflicted, like do
Hmm.
we spend time with people we don't see very often in close quarters? How do we
Yeah.
and there are a lot of tensions. Like it's fine if it's we don't mind close family members like parents, but extended
Hmm.
family that you don't see very often, and also
Yeah.
with the climate right now with everything going on, sometimes you don't get to
Yeah.
hear everybody's opinions on everything.
Well, yeah, and like this is the situation we're in. That normally, my wife's family will all come from Upper Michigan to Wisconsin for Thanksgiving, but we're like, like it's kind of worse here than it is where they're from. So we're just kind of like, well, why don't you guys just stay there this year and don't bother coming here, and worrying about that. And because we're all going to be getting together for Christmas, but we're going to go there to get together with them for Christmas. So it's like we'll just kind of do our thing with my family this year for Thanksgiving, and then do Christmas, with her family like we normally do. So
That'll probably be a little bit less stress for you guys too,
yeah,
like
yeah,
because I'm sure it's the same thing. For years, it's been okay, go to one person's side for lunch, go to the other person's side for dinner, and
Yeah.
you don't really get a chance to breathe.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a strong believer in the vacation from a vacation because it's always that, that last day, like when you get back, it's like, oh, I could really use tomorrow off yet, but just to do nothing because I had fun. It was a fun time. I'm glad I did that vacation with family, but man, like I'm still it wore me out, and I just need a day to just kind of relax before I go back to work.
You're making me think. You say day after vacation. So are you guys big on the Black Friday shopping?
Um, I've I wouldn't say I'm like super big on it. I have gone. It's more for the experience, honestly. I a lot of times didn't even have, I'll tell you what, it's the best way to do it. Just if you want the experience but don't want to have to wait in line for 3 hours to pay for something, just go experience it. Plan on not buying anything and like you'll get the best parts of it, the people watching and it's like, you've been waiting in line for 3 hours. Well, bye. I'm not getting anything, so enjoy all that.
Are there any games, regardless of Black Friday deals or anything, are there any games that have either recently come out or that will be coming out very soon that you are interested in getting?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's always a bunch on Switch, but my problem is I do a lot of waiting for games to go on sale, but unfortunately that doesn't always happen with Nintendo games. Because like I really, really want to. I've never played Pikmin 3. But I like Pikmin is my personal favorite franchise of Nintendo's. It's that and Zelda. Like
Hmm.
Pikmin and Zelda for me are like my absolute favorite like franchises of Nintendo. Like I'll never forget getting that first Pikmin. I was just so in love with it like instantly. Such a great game. And it's just, it's so like it was basic and and like just very, obviously family friendly and but at the same time it was just so much fun and just goofy and like I feel like the Rabbids kind of thing is kind of similar to it in some ways, but yeah, I never got to play the third one. I did play the first and the second one, but yeah, so I want to get that. I was glad that it was coming to Switch, but I just right now I just don't have the extra money, and Christmas is, less than or like a month away now almost. And so it's like, yeah, I don't really want to be spending too much money right now.
It all adds
You
up.
know, yeah, and leave options for people when they ask what I want for Christmas. I can be like this or that, so
Are you
but
are
yeah.
you big on in the indie games or digital downloads on the Switch?
Yeah, I do like try to go. I haven't recently, just because I'm afraid to look and because I don't want to spend money, but I absolutely love going on their deal section and like sometimes you find some really, really good indie games for like $3 on sale or something. And like you get surprised at how good something is, but like yeah, like the Switch though is definitely like my indie machine. Like if there's a really, really good indie game, it's most likely on the Switch, and that's a lot of times the best place to play it. Like, Gulf Story is one of the best, and I think they're making a second one to that now.
Wow.
So yeah, Gulf Story is an amazing game, or um, like I mean, Dead Cells I have on Xbox, but that's a game that I would like to eventually own on Switch. I feel like I would play it more there.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, things like that. I just feel like the Switch is like just perfect for, and there's just some games that you're like, yeah, that's a Switch game, and no, that one I'd rather have on Xbox or whatever. And So yeah, I definitely love the Switch. I just wish they would bring back the Wii Sports stuff for it, because that would just, in my opinion, if they had that, they would have everything that anyone could ever need.
Did you
Because I
guys?
loved the bowling game.
Oh, well, I have good news for you. Do you guys have the Clubhouse games?
Yes.
Okay, so they do have bowling on there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did try it, but I a little bit, but mostly the kids did. I set it up for the kids, but yeah, I need to actually go on there and like actually try that myself a little bit. So, yeah, because I do play that, but I've kind of dropped off of it recently, just because, like I said, I've some of the stuff that they've added on Game Pass that I've been playing on my phone just recently. So that's kind of been eating up my handheld time. So,
What have you been playing
but
on Game Pass recently?
um I've been playing the Gears Tactics,
Okay.
which is, so that was the one that's kind of um like a Diablo, or well, not Diablo, it's more like Mario Rabbids, but only in the Gears of War world, basically. So like you're moving your characters into position and then doing your moves to go through your turn, and then they go and do their turn, kind of thing.
Hmm.
A tactical, turn-based game. And that game's a lot of fun. It's really, or especially like that's a game that, like, if they could make it work, I would love to see them put that on the Switch, because it would be perfect for a Switch. But so yeah, I've been playing like that, and then also I've been playing some like Watch Dogs and stuff like that, and on my Xbox. And so like games like that, a lot of them I'm trying not to get too far into them, because I want to finish them on the Series X once I get one. But yeah, there's just been a couple of games recently like that have come out that I just caught my eye, and I've just kind of been spending some time on.
Is that
But
the
I do.
Legion? Xbox Watch Dogs Legion? That's
Yeah,
the one that
yeah,
came out?
yeah, where you can recruit anyone that you see walking around.
That
Yeah.
would be amazing.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, I'm actually not even playing the story really, because, like I said, I want to wait, and because that's one of the games that the Series X upgrade gives it, like, really really good 4K graphics, but then it also does the ray tracing at 4K at 60 frames.
Whoa.
And so it's like I've seen some video of people playing it, and it's like, you're in London. So you're like you're kind of getting to go to all the places that are in London and stuff. And then with the ray tracing, any windows or anything on buildings will reflect the world into them. Like you can, walk up to the windows and stuff, and it just kind of see the reflection of everything in the windows and stuff. So it just looks amazing.
Can't
And
believe
it's,
the details. My gosh.
yeah, it's ray tracing, I honestly think, is one of the most needed, like, steps in, like, in making games worlds feel more alive and more realistic, instead of walking up to a car window in a game and just seeing like that gray, like almost see through, but it's just like gray, kind of nothing in it,
Hmm.
like, and going from that to just being able to look into it and then see the world behind you just reflected in it, is just, it's just an amazing leap, as far as making games look good. So
They're beautiful. I
yeah,
I can't get over it. Like we go from talking about the systems you mentioned earlier to this.
yeah, it's crazy. And like, like, even trying to go back to some of those now, it's just like, man, like, these games are super hard, and but there's like nothing to them. Like, you play games now, and the games seem so much more complex, but at the same time they're still easier than those original things that we used to play.
Oh
It's
gosh.
funny how it's like, as things, you'd think that as well, and I mean there are people who do make games that are super hard, like, From Software and stuff with the the what are they called, Dark Souls and stuff. But it's like you'd think as technology gets better and better that the games would be harder and harder, but it's still those earlier games. I think some of those earlier games are still way harder than anything that we have today. So
Oh
it's
gosh.
it's interesting.
Because you have to be so precise with those games, where
Yeah,
newer
yeah,
games have a little leeway, like in real life.
yeah, yeah.
But this leads to another question that I'm sure a lot of listeners are curious about. So you've talked about your love of games, you've talked about
Hmm.
your history with video games and your personality and friends. So that brings us to podcasting, Jesse. I would love to know what got you into podcasting. What made you wake up one day and think, I want to talk about video games and I want to do it with friends. What was the impetus for all of this?
Well, I and we'll talk about this a little bit more after, but like, like with music and everything, I've always been into music. And when I was younger in elementary school, I had the cassette player, that the Walkman that had the little, radio tuner on it and stuff. And so sometimes I would listen to the morning talk shows on there on the bus in the morning, stuff that I probably shouldn't have been listening to. It probably wasn't old enough to be, although at the same time I was also listening to like the TLC's first album, which is probably something an elementary school kid doesn't need to be listening to either.
That
But
crazy, sexy, cool.
yeah, yeah,
The red one with their faces.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yeah. Yeah, and so I'd be listening to that kind of stuff. But so yeah, I would listen to the radio, and then as I got older, didn't really, like I started listening to more music and didn't really care about like the talk shows and stuff as I got older. And then like within the last like 15 years or whatever, 10 years or so, I started like just kind of like liking, I found a radio station locally that was playing this talk show and the show is called the Free Beer and Hot Wings Show. And I just kind of fell in love with that. And I was like, oh man, these guys are funny. These guys are hilarious. And so then I started listening to that, and like people had kind of talked a little bit about podcasts, before that. And I, like heard people mention it, but I didn't really ever go with any of the Apple products really. I've always kind of just been, Android based phone and stuff. And so, at first a lot of that podcast stuff was mostly on Apple, products only in the very beginning. And so I never really got into them, but as I was getting into this radio show and, podcasts became a bigger thing, um, that listening to that radio show kind of, and then I started paying the $5 a month to be able to get their podcast version of it so I could hear the full like 4 hour show without having to sit at the radio, right? And so then that kind of, it spread from there. Like they talked a lot about these different comedians, and they mentioned the Never Not Funny podcast, with Jimmy Pardo, the comedian. So then I started listening to that. And then I'm like, you know what? I really love video games. I should see if there's any podcasts for video games out there. And so I actually found the, Nerds Gone Rogue, just through Facebook. I don't remember exactly how, but I had came across, the show, and I started listening to them, and I'm like, wow, I really like these guys. They're very similar, seem like they're very similar to me, as far as likes and stuff like that. And so, Corey and Ed, I would mostly listen to Pow Block. And I did listen to their other shows and stuff as well, but I mostly just listened to Pow Block. Um, And so then it kind of started from there, and I started messaging in to the guys and stuff, and kind of being active in the community. And then eventually Corey, and Ed like approached me because I was like started chatting with them kind of in Facebook and stuff like that, and eventually they're like, hey, like, would you be interested in joining us or whatever, and doing a podcast? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I hate getting up in front of people and like being like any kind of center of any kind of attention, like just makes me uncomfortable. And so I'm like, I don't know, I'll have to think about it. Like, yeah, I would like to, but I just don't know if I'm going to be any good at this or whatever, like I just didn't know if it was something that I would be able to do or not or be good at. And so I thought about it, and they had me come on like one episode and just said, well, why don't you just come on, an episode of something as just a guest, and then if you like it from that point, then think about it more or whatever. And so that's basically how it happened. Is I just kind of like I'm like, I've worked third shift now for quite a few years, and it's not until just the last 3 weeks that that I have someone else that works with me. So I would work in a building by myself every single night, then come home, take care of the kids until my wife got home. And so I was never having adult conversations ever. Like it was go to work where there's no adults other than me, and then come home to kids and have conversation, with them. So it was like, God, this would be a really good opportunity for me to actually sit down and have an adult conversation with other adults about something that I enjoy, And so I was like, eventually, after trying the episode with them, I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, you know what? I think I would like to do this. And so then, that's kind of, we talked about then from there, me being a big fan of Xbox, and Corey and Ed knowing that. And then they were like, well, we should maybe think about doing an Xbox show. And then that's kind of how that all started, is me joining them, doing pow block and stuff with them, and then eventually me and them doing Xbox show. And then that's how Arsenal X kind of started, was from me joining them and just kind of being that push that they needed to finally have someone they felt would be good for an Xbox show, to help make that something. So yeah, that's kind of how it all happened. Is I started out as a fan of their stuff, and just by happenstance I happened to come across their show through Facebook. And yeah, and then from there, that's kind of it. Just it was rolling like something rolling down the hill, and just kept on going.
So
But
so Arsenal X was the first one you did with Boss Rush Games.
yeah, yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was because yeah, we've had like that was with the Nerds Gone Rogue. I did Pow Block and I did Arsenal X with them, and then we started the NX show, which was where we mixed all of the consoles into one show, just because we were having a hard time with like time and stuff, like trying to find the time to be able to do all the different shows. And that only lasted for a little while. We didn't plan on it being permanent. It was just kind of something until we could figure out what we needed to do and where we needed to be to kind of get back to doing the separate shows. I think a part of it is we were trying to hopefully find at least like one or two more people that could help us out, so we didn't have to be so reliant with, we all of us have jobs besides this, and so like it's been just really nice to have a group of people that can kind of hop on whenever they feel like or can. And it's nice because like a lot of times, like if it's like Arsenal X, and if I'm not on it, I'm gonna listen to it then, because I wasn't there, so I can listen to it like a fan again.
That's
And
really cool. That's a cool perspective. Hey, it's for fan
yeah,
perspective.
yeah, yeah. So it's, like it's been a blast, and like it's been great, like picking up you and LaRon and like and Austin and like everyone that that's joined. It's been just a lot of fun, and it's really renewed my joy of doing all this kind of stuff again, really, because it was getting rough there for a little bit, just because we were trying to do a lot by ourselves, and we were enjoying it and still always having fun doing it, but it was just like like start you don't want to take too much time away from doing stuff with family, or you want to make sure that they come first and stuff still, when and things like that. So
That can be so challenging even without doing a podcast. So
yeah,
you
yeah,
throw
exactly.
podcasts in the mix, and there are some weeks where I feel so bad on Pow Block because they're like, "What have you been playing?" I'm like, a little bit of Animal Crossing every day."
Yeah,
Because you'd think I don't have kids, but you'd think I have more free time, but just sometimes I'm just exhausted
yeah,
for
yeah. It's
work and everything.
yeah, yep, yeah, and like that's the thing. It's not when you're younger and you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities, and we could sit and play like video games for like 15 hours straight. Like it was nice, but yeah, it's just not it's not practical now. And as an adult, you're lucky sometimes, with having kids, if you even get like just an hour out of the day of just being able to just kind of do your thing and not have to worry about anything. It's a being a parent's a full-time job, or a 24-hour a day job sometimes. And so yeah, but like as kids get older, obviously it gets easier, and they've got their own personalities and things that they want to do now. And I'm both of my kids are have their interests in video games, and like what they like to play and stuff. They like the Hello Neighbor and stuff like that, all those kind of fun games like that. So and it's fun to be able to play with them as well, and do stuff with them. And uh like my wife, she's used to be into video games a little bit more, like again, like when it was just she had a little bit more free time before being a parent and stuff like that. um and so like she likes to jump on and play with the kids and play with us and stuff. We'll play Mario Kart. That's her favorite. She always loved Mario Kart, so, and
Oh,
Mario Party. So
you know,
so
video games just bring families so close together.
hmm and like it's surprisingly, even when they're not trying to, I do think the games are very good at teaching you something as well. Motor skills for one, but like just being able to process things maybe, or like giving you a different perspective of things, or helping, like Nintendo games do a very good job of helping kind of show people's ability to kind of have an imagination, and things like that. So eh, I think I pick video games like over TV shows or something for kids any day. Like I just think there's so much more to be learned from video games than from TV shows. But
They're kind of like virtual storybooks. Like you can read
yeah.
to kids, which is a very important
Hmm.
skill and
Yeah.
ability. But in addition to reading, let them play video games, and
Yep.
it's like a story come to life.
Yeah, and speaking of me and my wife, like one of the things that like our relationship moved fairly quickly because it was just such a perfect match, for
Oh,
us. Like, like we both like absolutely love horror movies, and we both like have the same sense of humor, about things, and just like when we started dating, we both came out of a really, really awful, just kind of going nowhere relationship that we were just so glad to be done with, kind of thing. And like, like some people talk, and I do believe in this, like a lot of times people come out of a relationship and you're afraid that when you start something too soon that it's just like a rebound type thing. But I feel like we were both like just so ready to actually look for someone that we wanted to, like settle down with. We both were just like in that past relationship, we were just so over that it just was not about that. It was gone, like almost instantly. And so, yeah, so we our love of like horror movies and stuff and all that brought us together in believe it or not pretty quickly. And so now our kids are showing interest in like horror movies and stuff, our oldest at least so far. Our daughter is still kind of, we're trying to be wait with that because she gets scared a little too easy yet. So but our son is just definitely, he's into the horror movies and stuff, like, and he wants to see stuff, but we can kind of make sure that it's not too much yet. But I bought the other day, I bought the Scary Stories book franchise that we grew up as with as kids, that like was almost, there's a whole documentary I believe on Netflix or Amazon or something about that book series, but it was like almost banned from schools because they thought it was too scary for kids and all this. Well, I ended up getting the full series of that, and I for the kids. And my son is, I think he's already read through the first two of the three books already. Like he is just, the other day he started reading it and he didn't want to put it down. Every time he got a chance, he would pick it up and he wanted to read them all. So
And
yeah.
that's amazing to me because you say it was possibly banned, and or wanted they some people wanted it to be banned in some schools. And when you look at some of the fairy tales, the origins, not the Disney versions,
Yeah, yeah,
pretty terrifying.
yeah, 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 and even like like simple like songs like the London Bridge is falling down, all those kinds of like nursery rhymes and stuff like that are based around some pretty horrible things. So
Yeah.
you know,
Hey,
I
let's
mean,
some things that didn't really happen,
and
but
I mean, even like Hansel and Gretel, like,
oh,
I mean, like, there's just so many terrifying things that we read and watched, animated movies of as children, that we didn't realize just how morbid and like crazy those stories were. But there's some crazy stuff. I wish I could think of it right now, but I can't. There was something like one of the Disney movies. I had learned something about the origins of the like the actual story, like the original one, and it's like made into a Disney movie. But like reading about it, it was like, holy cow, is that morbid? Like I can't remember. I know I had talked about it with Corey or something. I just said fun fact, and I'm like, did you know da 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 da? And it's like, I can't believe that this, but I can't remember what it was now. But
The Little Mermaid's pretty morbid. The real Hans Christian Andersen version.
yeah,
Oh God.
yeah, 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 I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, I want to say like maybe it was the Beauty and the Beast one was two or something. I don't remember, but yeah, it's crazy. Like, as we grow up and we find out like more about things, which could there is like as a kid, like, speaking of like things that you learn, as you get older, that like, I as a kid, I was always obsessed with like Native American culture and stuff like that. And then I grew up and I found out all the awful ways they were treated and stuff, and it was like, oh man.
Yeah, and Peter Pan, for example, the part with the Indians in there,
Yeah.
like what makes the red man red,
Yeah.
I don't believe in censorship. I think
No.
people need to acknowledge what was going on in the past so we don't make those same mistakes. I think,
Yeah.
is Disney doing what Warner Brothers is doing with a little disclaimer before the episodes, maybe before movies?
They, I don't know, because I'm trying to think of when the last time they released Peter Pan, if that would have been
Oh,
too early for them to because with them it's the whole vault thing. Well,
mm,
although I don't know if it's on Disney Plus. I Because if it was on Disney Plus, I could see them maybe doing something on there, but
mm. Because I know Warner Brothers, for a lot of their cartoons, they'll put the things you will see and hear do not reflect our opinions.
mhm,
It was made during a
mhm.
different time. Like
Yeah.
some of the cultures, the stereotypes they had, the negative stereotypes.
Hmm.
So yeah, when you're an innocent child, it's you don't think about those things, and then you
Yeah.
grow up and it blows your mind, like Song of the South.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it's funny because yeah, like there's just a lot of things as a child that you don't think about, but it's unfortunately it's conditioning and things where these adults that are believe or say these things that aren't right, and then like you don't think anything of it, and then you learn that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be saying that. And it's like, like you don't think anything of it when you're younger, just,
Yeah.
even my grandma, who is like my mom's mom, who is like, I considered her as a saint. But, like when you find, when you find out it's not okay to call, like, certain things that you've learned from them, like they would call it, and you just never thought of it as anything other than, what it was. But then you learn that, hey, that there's a one particular word in that thing that you're calling it that you probably shouldn't be saying.
Yeah, it's
So,
a little offensive.
yeah. Yeah, 'cause like I'm talking about, like, I know I'm kind of being vague, but like Brazil nuts, what some people have called Brazil nuts.
Oh, like the actual food? The actual like
Yeah, the Brazil nuts. Yeah, they my
oh,
grand
oh wow. I mean, you don't have to say it. I didn't realize
no,
that people
no,
call
my
nuts.
my grandma used to call them N-word toes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's
Oh
unfortunately that was a name for him at some point, and it was no big deal to call him that. And so, like, I grew up and I, heard that my whole life, them being called that, didn't think anything of it till I got older, and I'm like, you probably should not be saying that.
yeah. I hope that we've learned from past mistakes, and I hope that whatever
Yeah,
our generation is doing that's offensive and wrong, I hope the next one just it keeps getting better and we become more loving towards
yeah.
one another.
Well, and like, well, it's a really tough situation because, again, like, I don't want to censor certain people, like, obviously, if someone, is African American and they say that word, it's fine. But at the same time, it's like, it kind of sucks that word exists at all, because, like, I can't listen to rap music or whatever with potentially my kids, hearing that word. And I understand, all I got to do is be a parent and say, hey, like, it's like, you'll understand as you get older, that's a word that we should never say, and it's very offensive and it's hurtful, and it's, like, the very, meaning of it is said or built behind malice and hurt and hatred and and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's like I kind of just wish that we would just get rid. Why do we need to use it at all? But I don't want to tell anyone, that they shouldn't use that, if they, they feel like they have the right to be able to. But at the same, like it's just a bummer that that word even exists, because it is an awful word. And if we could just get rid of those kind of awful words that we've used in the past way too often, in some cases, it's like the world, I think, would just be better if we just didn't even have to worry about those words being used at all anymore.
And it's kind of like the B word for women,
Yeah,
but then on the other hand, some women own it and they use it as a
yeah,
term of affection for their
yeah,
friends. Or there's a
yeah,
song called Boss A B, which
yeah,
is all about empowering. It's
yeah,
Black women, and it's all about
yep,
empowering, and it's so fierce because it's like they're reclaiming that word, but at the same time, I wouldn't want my godson to hear it and think I'm just gonna. That's what women want to be called.
yeah, yeah,
It's so many
yeah,
nuances to that.
yeah. And and that it is kind of the same idea, with certain people being able to use certain words, and it is fine, like it is fine for them to do that. But at the same time, you just I, I mean, you want to have the conversation either way with your kids about things, and the past, and hoping that they, learn from it and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you just like, they're still just kids. I wish I didn't have to, be so realistic, and like, about things, certain things, like you hate to, like, I mean, I already have with my kids. I've, talked to them a few times about the way, people are treated, and my son has friends that aren't the same color as him, and to have to, tell him that, there's a lot of awful people out there that, would be mean to your friend just because he doesn't look like them, is just sad that you even have to tell them that. But, like, he was really great about it. He's like, well, why? He's like, but he's my friend, and, like, just him working, like, just trying to, just can't comprehend quite that someone would be so awful just because of something so stupid. But
The innocence of children, poor bless them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But
Oh,
But it's like I just sat and had a talk with them and said, like, hey, if you ever see anyone treating him poorly just because of the way he looks, that you make sure you stand up for him, and you tell them to stop, or you get a teacher or whatever, an adult, and you let us know, because it's never okay, for that, to happen. So, it's definitely been a fun teaching moment, though, at the same time, as awful as it is, to just, hope that he will be an ally like us, like that, someone who's willing to stand up for when things are happening that shouldn't. We need, like, you think about certain things. It's like, if we don't have kids that we're teaching the right way, and too many people that are teaching the wrong way are having kids, like, you got to try to balance that out. But
I think that's the eternal challenge. Is
yeah, the eternal.
like I know I don't have children, but I see how some people treat their own children in public. And again, I try to reserve judgment because I don't know if
Yeah.
it's been a little brat and
Hmm.
the parents just at their wits' end.
Yeah.
It's just, but there are
Yeah.
some cases where it's just blatant hatred almost, and
Yeah. Yeah.
breaks my heart because you hear so many stories about people who struggle to have children or can't afford
Hmm.
them or whatever,
Hmm.
who would be amazing parents. So kudos to
Yeah.
you and your wife for trying to make the world a place, a brighter place, to have more sunshine, to have more love. So thank you for that, Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, like, I think I've told you about this. I know I've spoke about it before, but speaking of people not being able to have kids, like that was a really fun experience that I got to experience. As my wife actually was a surrogate.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
tw yeah. So, we got to experience that, and we helped a couple out who like the girl that we helped out, she had a daughter, but like she literally was like deathly ill, like the whole entire, like, 9 months or whatever, like she was bedridden, she was just completely sick for just months upon months, and it got to the point of where I think it was like life threatening as well. And so they really wanted to have another kid, but she just couldn't go through that again, possibly. And so, my wife was kind of interested in it. My wife's a nurse, so I mean, that kind of thing is, obviously been in her blood since the very beginning of just trying to help people and stuff. And I'll tell you that, like, it was a crazy and amazing experience. Like, I mean, like, at the end of the day, like that's not it's not your kid, but it's like, but it was so just cool being able to give that kind of gift to someone who wants it, and to be able to be in a position where we could do that easily. and
Oh,
and it was an amazing experience. And like, we actually, my wife was in the hospital to deliver the baby around New Year's. We were in, New Year's Eve. We spent the the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day in the hospital, and the baby was born. It was a New Year's baby, and so it made it into the newspaper and stuff.
so
So
extra special.
yeah, yeah. So it was a fun experience, and just like us all hanging out in the hospital, room together, and just enjoying it. And it was a great experience that I was glad, I got to be a part of and stuff. So
That's awesome. And that's
yeah,
that's a beautiful gift to give to someone. I'm
yeah,
sure that they greatly appreciated that.
yeah, yeah. We still stay in contact with them, and like with the whole COVID stuff, we haven't really gotten to do anything with them, lately. But yeah, we stayed friends with them, and we still talk with them and stuff. And I'm sure once this whole COVID stuff is all over, we'll probably, hang out again with them occasionally and stuff some more. But yeah, it was a definitely an awesome experience.
I'm glad y'all got to do that for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you were saying that in addition to horror movies and video games, and obviously podcasting, you are
hmm
also a musician. Would you like to
hmm
tell us about your history with music?
Yeah, so actually, and this kind of touches back on something I said earlier, that so as a young child, I've always had this fascination with Native American culture, and just kind of being in Wisconsin, like, we have a lot of reservations all over the place here. There's multiple different tribes here. Some of the more popular ones are like the Menominee and Oneida. Oneida, the Oneida Indians uh have a big casino in Green Bay. And so, like, it's very popular for that. But so, like, I've just kind of always been fascinated with that. And so when I was younger, my parents actually took us to the Oneida powwow that they have every year. I believe it's around the 4th of July here. and what they do is they have like dance competitions, and so different members of different tribes and stuff come, and they wear their traditional garb and stuff, and then there'll be a competition for each dance, like the each types of dances that they have, and they compete. And so my parents brought us when we were younger to go watch this, and I was just fascinated. Like right away, I was just like, "Oh, this is they're wearing such cool, costumes, and like the beating of the drums, and like their dances and everything were just so cool. I was just mesmerized by it all, and so like I've like since then, like since I was younger, just really was fascinated with the different kinds of music and stuff. And then, growing up, my dad listened to country music mostly, and like oldies, which, would have been like 50s, 60s, 70s type, music. And and so like I liked some of the country stuff. I mostly, for what my parents listened to, it was more about I liked the oldies stuff, like the 50s and 60s. um but then, like, kind of as I gotten older, and I started listening to like the radio myself, and finding kind of my own likes and things like that. I started to really get mostly into like hip hop and R&B when I was younger. So, like I said earlier, like one of my first like cassettes was like the TLC, like that very first TLC album. Um, and like I was listening to things um well, Mariah Carey and stuff like that, but like I liked Paula Abdul a lot when I was younger, and and uh and believe it or not, I remember me and my sister being excited because my mom was gonna buy us the New Kids on the Block live pay-per-view. Like it was actually being, I think, broadcasted live, but it was a pay-per-view only thing, so you had to pay for it, and then and then we got to watch it live just from at our house. And yeah, so we I remember watching that, and so like I've just kind of always been into like hip hop, R&B, pop music, like all that kind of stuff, when I was younger. And then, as I got older, like experimenting more, but I always kind of stayed in that R&B and hip hop kind of like genre more than anything. Like it was like, like you had things like Ice Cube and Ice T and Bone Thugs and Harmony and stuff eventually, and Tag Team. I had their single on cassette tape around the same time that I bought the TLC, the Whoop There It Is
Mm-hmm.
song, and Sir Mix-a-Lot, and all these kinds of, all that kind of stuff. And Beastie Boys, and so like I kind of stayed into that stuff. And what's really weird is then I eventually, like pretty early on, started getting into like more like dance type, like techno-y kind of music. But I had found this band, Prodigy,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of like, it was like they took the whole hip hop thing that I really liked, but then they mixed like guitars and, like other stuff that like I, didn't really pay too much attention to. Like I really never got into rock and roll and stuff like that fairly early, other than like, Beatles, things like that, and more of the 80s or the 50s and 60s stuff. Really, like I never really liked Elvis or any of that kind of stuff. I never really got into. Um, but so like it was funny because like here comes this band Prodigy, who kind of introduced me to more like dance musics versus like, and had like rock and roll kind of stuff to it as well, or more like what would be considered like almost punk. Uh, And so then that like really opened up my library from there. Like then all of a sudden I went from Prodigy to, hey, you should listen to this band Metallica. I think Metallica was one of the very first rock and roll bands that I had ever like really listened to and first got interested in.
I like that you call
But
it rock and roll because I always associated them with metal.
yeah, metal,
I,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
laugh.
metal,
No, I'm just laughing.
yeah.
'Cause,
No, it's yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it would be considered more metal, but like yeah, that was yeah, what brought me into the more hardcore, rock and roll metal type stuff.
it's a
And
genre of rock and roll for sure.
yeah. So like, but kind of like Prodigy for me was like the center of like of all my interests, like because that's what introduced me into stepping beyond just the R&B and the hip hop and the pop music, like that introduced me into like rock and roll and punk music and rock and metal, and but it also had it had those original things of where I started mixed into it, like kind of brought everything together for me. And so that's why Prodigy for me has really been like my still to this day like my like main band that I really look to for a lot of inspiration as far as like things that I like and stuff like that.
That's awesome, and I love that you listen to so many genres, Jesse. I see your tweets with these
Yeah,
different songs you share, and you talk about different songs in our Boss Rush Games group chat, and I love that.
yeah.
It warms my heart because I used to almost feel a little embarrassed when I was a teenager to admit that I like some country music.
Hmm.
You know how it is? You almost want
Yeah,
identity,
yeah,
like, oh, I want to be associated only with this genre. I don't want anybody to know that I'm listening to Lil Wayne sometimes.
yeah,
I want people to think I'm listening only to Evanescence and Lil Ike.
yeah. Yeah, and that lead, I think, for me, like early on, I was kind of a little bit of an outcast anyways to start off with. Um, and I won't go into this too much right now, I'll just keep it with music more, but like I had a learning disability and stuff. And so like from a very early age, I was looked at to a lot of people or some people as being really different. And, like to some people, unfortunately, like I wasn't smart or, like, and you have all these feelings that you put on yourself because like as a kid, you don't know how to deal with certain things or you don't understand it as much. And so, like, I've just honestly, because of, like that, and just, you know, a lot of times my friends in school and stuff were the other kids who were also outcasts or were different, didn't fit the perfect norm, middle of the road standard, that sometimes the world puts on us. And so I've always just kind of been like, you know what, I'll just like and do things the way that I want to and how I want to, and people already in my eyes as a child didn't like me because of the way I was. So what does it matter past that point? So, like I've always just kind of been like, I don't really care anymore what if I like something that, people think is silly or is, not cool to like, like yeah, that's I think where a lot of my, just kind of expanded genres, like all different kinds of music that I like is kind of come from, is just that fear of not having that fear of carrying what I like, whether someone's gonna not think that that's not cool or whatever. So like I admit, like I love like emo music, like one of the probably most made fun of genres of music within the last 20 years has been emo music. It was so not cool to like emo music, and like South Park makes fun of the emo kids. They have the emo kids on there, and but like to me, all music is emo. Like all music is emotional. It's just some music isn't going to completely 100% like link with how like how you perceive things, or the experiences that you've gone through, and and things like that. So like, yeah, I mean, my first relationship was, I was putting a lot into it and not getting much back from it. And, that experience of life, getting cheated on then and later, and just going through all those things, like in my first, right away in my first relationship, and then I started listening to like more emo music and stuff, because it was like, what, this guy, the what he's singing about, he gets me right now. And sometimes it's just, people like to hold, emotions or thoughts or things in, and not, try to go through them in their minds, or try to resolve things. And to me, like, music has always been a really good way of showing emotion without physically showing it, right? Or talking about, or pondering things that maybe need to be pondered so you can move forward. Like, music is sometimes, lights a fire underneath you to force you to do those things that maybe you need to do. And so, like, that's why all the different genres, it's always been like, what kind of like emotional, situation I'm in will determine a lot of times what I listen to, or and so like, I kind of started, with that core of like the Prodigy band, when it came to deciding to want to maybe try to make music. Like, I wanted to experiment with these ideas and things that I had in my head. Now, I don't know music theory. I've never had any lessons on any kind of instrument, but here comes technology, to make something that, like, used to be impossible, um an possibility now, that I could make music without knowing, music theory, knowing how to play a piano. Like, you basically just, mess around with sounds, and eventually you're going to figure out like how to like, either do something, like, duplicate something maybe that you've heard, or like, take pieces of what you've heard before and kind of mix them together in your own way.
Mhm.
And like, for me, it was almost like playing a video game. It was like, it was like trying to solve a puzzle in a video game. You're like, okay, well, how, if I put this, drum piece here, and it plays there, and like, well, like, how, like, what do I have to do to make these drums sound like something that you would hear in music,
I
And
li- I was gonna say I liked that song you shared with our team today or the other day. I'm
yeah,
looking through the chat right now.
yeah, yeah, that's something, yeah, newer that I'm working on. And it's, yeah, I mean, I started on this program that's called Fruity Loops, and people who are somewhat familiar with any kind of like audio type editing and stuff like that probably know, I've heard of it before or whatever. But it's essentially just like a program that's just loaded with um like all different kinds of instruments, and it's all played digitally, and you can manipulate the sounds to make them sound authentic, like without any kind of break in them, where it just sounds like robotic. Like, you can actually make it sound like it's someone actually playing a violin, or it's someone actually playing drums, or it's someone, actually doing these instruments. And it's just a matter of learning how to make something seem coherent and put together, right. And so I've been screwing around with this program since high school, pretty much. And I've had, keyboard. I had a keyboard that I bought in high school or middle school, I think, that had like different things you could program on it, and little drum stuff you could program on it. And I messed around with that first and made some music with my friends. Like I started out doing more of like hip hop stuff, like where I would make a beat and then me and my friends would write lyrics to rap over the beats and stuff that I would make.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so we like that's kind of how it started. And then I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna start actually making music like this, I already listened to a lot of hip hop and a lot of rap, but I need to really find like where is my like what kind of thing can I replicate that's kind of like how I feel would be like my kind of style that I prefer or whatever. And so then that's when I eventually I was just listening to all different kinds of rap music. And then eventually I came across the group from Tennessee called 3 6 Mafia, and they were like a hardcore like gangster like hip hop. And I was like, oh, I really like their beats and stuff. And so then I really started digging into their stuff and just trying to understand it and being like, oh, cool, like this is crazy. A rap group sampling a Cradle of Filth song for their rap beat. I'm like, what? This is
Who would have
like this
thought
is so weird. And then learning that like, like the um one of the main, founders of 3 6 Mafia calls himself the Scarecrow. And it's like, oh, there's my love of horror and all that. Because I did get into like Insane Clown Posse and all that. Yes, people love to make fun of them.
that?
Yes, I was a fan of their stuff.
I like
But
songs.
yeah, but I mean, I loved horror movies, so it was like a natural progression. It's like, how could I not listen to this rap group called Insane Clown Posse, who's like these clowns who supposedly go around, like killing all the bad people in the world.
Hey, I
Like I mean,
love people. Fun like
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, like they're talking about killing bigots and killing, this and that. And it's like, well, I don't like those people. I'm not really actually going to kill them, but it's like, it's an interesting, form of music, and it's kind of fits that horror, like that horror genre of movies that I like. So it's kind of like a mix of my love of hip hop and horror movies together. And so then that, and 3 6 Mafia is kind of the same way. They're a little bit more, I feel like realistic. Like unfortunately, they may have seen a lot of these things that they rap about actually happening and stuff, because Tennessee is can be a hard place to be. There's some bad areas where have to struggle and deal with a lot of stuff. So,
some rough,
but
uh, rough
yeah.
areas.
Yeah, so like the then 3 6 Mafia was kind of like their music is what really got me interested in making like beats, like trying to like really venture into doing that kind of stuff.
I'm looking
And
them up right now.
yeah, yeah, they like I their stuff is pretty hardcore. And like there's some stuff that they do and sing about that's we've heard a lot, but again, is like certain things that I don't necessarily like, like that thing you talked about with the Disney movies. I do not I do not agree with, calling, women, referring to them in certain terms and things like that. Like, it's all music and just, a persona to me, I guess, in some ways. But
Yeah,
But yeah,
a way to have fun, to break out and express yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
like have you ever there's a female singer, I cannot think of her name. She's part of like one of those Real Housewives shows. I've never watched
Oh,
that
okay.
series, but she's a singer too.
Okay.
And
Yeah, my wife would probably know better, but yeah, because yeah, I don't really.
I cannot think of her name, but her persona is not, people like what they like. I don't care. It's not
Yeah,
something I'm particularly attracted to go
yeah.
out of my way. But she did a TED talk, and that I was like, what? She's on a TED talk, and you're saying about personas and just expressing yourself. And she said that she's been married to these wealthy men and always felt that her identity was just as a housewife, and whatever her persona is the singer, is her way to try something different and act, basically.
Yeah,
Kind of like, I don't think that Katy Perry goes around in a cupcake costume 24/7.
yeah, 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 and like and like Britney Spears doesn't really actually want to be a slave, like like there's like I mean, obviously there's a hidden context to some of that, but at the same time, like it's also a persona, like 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 if you as you get older, there's things that you're interested in, and under the right circumstances, or with like those kinds of things are fine, but it's like that's not, it's not so like people adult talk people talk about like this type of person who will watch pornography and think that that's how women want to be treated, or and it's just not true.
No.
It's a persona. It's a form of expression, but it's not to be taken so seriously, or factual as being factual. So
It's a fantasy. And
yeah,
think about romance novels and erotica, for
yeah,
example.
yeah.
I went to a writers conference and Sandra Brown was there, and she's known for her romance novels. And I had never read any of her novels, but I was like, let me go. She's apparently a famous author. Let me go sit in on her talk. She was
Hmm.
like the meekest, sweetest lady in the world. And she said at one of her conferences, a man raised his hand and said, "Where do you get all your ideas from?" And it was her husband. She was messing with her in the audience. So, but yeah, like I think the author of 50 Shades of Grey, if you look at her, she's
Hmm.
not someone like a dominatrix type person.
Yeah. Hmm.
She's writing these dirty books. But you're right.
Yeah.
I think we all have different levels of our personalities and identities. I think that's really important. I get really worried whenever people let themselves fall victim to, oh, I'm just a spouse, I'm just a parent, I'm just
Hmm.
whatever my occupation is.
Hmm.
You express yourself with video games, with music, with
Hmm.
love for your family, with your job. You're not just Jesse this worker. You're Jesse the
Hmm.
podcaster. You're Jesse the Xbox fan. Jesse the dad. Jesse the husband.
Hmm.
You're Jesse the food lover. Whatever it is.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I think that's the thing is sometimes people just take certain things a little too seriously, and that kind of goes into another aspect of one of my, parts of my personality, um is like I absolutely love comedy. And for me, sometimes the more offensive it is, the more I enjoy it.
Do you like
And,
Anthony Jeff?
like, what was that?
Would you like Anthony Jeselnik?
Yeah, yeah, like
That's funny.
like well, I love like George Carlin was one of my favorite. I luckily got to see him before he passed away. He came into our town here, a couple of years, or I think it was like 2 years before he passed away. And I was lucky to get to see him, and I was literally the front row, like I was right at the edge of the stage, and
Oh,
just looking up at, just like I'm like, I know I've heard every single joke he just said tonight, but man, I got to see him, you
that's a
know?
different energy to see someone live.
Yeah. And so like, I love like him, or I love um like, well, like I said, Jimmy Pardo, or like some of these comedians that are very, very offensive, like say offensive things, but I like that, like there's this, situation where people can joke about something that is actually pains them, or is hurtful to them, but sometimes you got to laugh things off, and try to not take things so personal and stuff like that, and like that's what that offensive comedy is it's these people have had to deal with some really, really hard things in their life, and so they make fun of it because that's the only way they know how to get over it, and try to understand, that it's not, you need to stop, taking this so seriously, and just joke about it, and say, and kind of throw it in people's faces, and say, F you for thinking this about me, or being awful to me, because I'm gonna joke about it, and I'm gonna laugh about it, and so say what you want. It's not gonna hurt my feelings, because
Yeah.
it's a joke. And so like it's like a more offensive comedy. I just understand it. I understand that these things they're joking about are something very hurtful that they've probably had to deal with in the past, and this is them just letting everyone know that they don't care, like that. So it's like that. That's how I feel about like certain things. Is it's like we've got to stand up, for people, and make sure that these hurtful things don't happen. But at the same time, when someone is joking about it, chances are that they know exactly what it feels like to have to deal with that thing. They're not joking and laughing at it like it's like, like ha ha, like these people had to go through this thing. It's like they've lived it, and they know that those jokes that they're saying are them, like being able to finally laugh about, laugh something off that they had to deal with. So
I love
like
it.
comedy is great. Like I just, yeah, there's just comedy in general, like from, I've loved like Leslie Nielsen movies. Like me and Ed are going to talk about Airplane
Is that what
soon.
I was reviewing last night? I saw his tweets, his commentary.
Yeah, he was talking about, but we're me and him, yeah, are gonna do a an optional opinion, I believe, and talk about it,
I like that.
and review it. And I like, my favorite Leslie Nielsen movie is still Wrongfully Accused. It's so good. Like I love Airplane, but that one's really good, and like all the Naked Gun movies and stuff too are great. But
Not
which actually started out as a TV show.
really.
Yeah, that's where those movies actually spawned off of, I believe, was that they made like a little tiny, like couple episode TV show, and then I believe it ended up turning into a
Really?
movies. Yeah.
That's
Is
that's amazing. I didn't know that. It
yeah, it's
isn't OJ Simpson in one of them?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, he's in, I think he's in the first two, or maybe the last two. I don't remember, because
God,
I know there's three movies. But
oh, that
yeah,
changed since then
yeah.
a little bit.
So, well, and now I know I've gone off of on a tangent here and brought us away from music,
Uh,
but yeah, like so like like things like my music and stuff has really been influenced though by all those things that I like comedy, and my love of sci-fi and horror and just like all these kinds of things mixed with, things that I've heard growing up and things that I hear now, and you get inspiration. And I've just kind of lately, I wish I had more time to work on music, just being able to sit. But again, it's really hard when you have kids to just be able to sit quietly somewhere and just sit and just pay attention to just one thing. And so like I a lot of times though, because the program version that I have, which has been a lifesaver, is on my phone. So
Mm-hmm.
literally any music that I've made has been all just made right on my phone, like nothing more than that. It's just my phone, and I can do anything and everything I want right from my phone to make the music. And so if I feel inspired by something, I can just throw an idea. If I have an idea in my head, I can just lay it down in the program and then just work from there or whatever.
Are you the
So,
one who made the song intros for all the podcasts?
I've made it some of the podcasts that we have I are using my intro. I think a lot of them though, I think need to I think NX right now and Arsenal, or Boss Rush and Arsenal X, I think are the only two. Well, yeah, I think those are the only two right now that are using one of my songs. Um, it used to be that like I had one for Javelins for Hire, which was an anthem podcast that me and Corey were doing, and then also did one for Tower Casuals. I don't think he uses that though for the new show, the bring back of it. But yeah, I had a whole bunch of them that I've made that we've kind of phased in and out. I had one for Pow Block as well. But like I've kind of wanted to go and make some different stuff for those, kind of starting anew and kind of try to make something different for those. So been trying to get to it when I can, but sometimes I just feel inspired and it's like I got to write something down. It may not be anything to do with like any of the show intro stuff, but it's just like I got to get this down and like try to figure something out with this. And that's kind of what that thing that I sent recently in our chat, that was kind of just something where I just was, all of a sudden I felt like inspired to do something, and I just kind of started it. And it was a really basic version of it when I first sent it to Ed, but then I added on it the other day, and then I sent it to, shared it for everyone because there's a little bit more to it. But yeah, it just kind of, that's how my music is, just like whenever I feel inspired, or something like an emotion or something I'm going through inspires me to what kind of sound I want to go for, or but it's all just been completely me teaching myself and just trying to figure things out. But I think what helps though is I I really wish that I would have like actually went to schooling for learning piano, because I I've been very fortunate that like I can um like figure stuff out. Like I can listen to a song and like learn how to play it just by listening to it, like trying to just playing, like okay, I think it might be these keys that they're hitting right now. Like, like I've been able to do that with some stuff now, not like really complex stuff, but I think, that's really been helpful, is just being able to kind of almost mimic certain things and kind of figure like keys and notes and stuff like that out a little bit on my own. So
That's very impressive.
yeah, I've even actually I don't have a guitar anymore, but like I started listening to The Cure
Hmm.
quite a bit, like when I was in a teenager, and like just absolutely fell in love with them, and like Depeche Mode and like a lot of those 80s bands that are a little more on the darker, like gothic kind of side.
Good
And
stuff.
well, and and again, like Depeche Mode, like that was like a mix of rock and roll, but they kind of have that like techno, like dance
Yeah,
kind of synth,
industrial
to it.
kind of.
Yeah, yeah, and so like, it always comes back to like the dance music or the techno music or the hip hop, and so that's why like when I make music, a lot of my stuff is kind of like that core of what's again kind of like interested me in other standing out, going outside of that and finding other things that kind of pull of that music into it and mix other things with it, so yeah, and like the with the Cure, like I had at one point bought a guitar and I bought an effects pedal, and then I would start plugging the microphone into the effects pedal and using the effects through my vocals to make sounds, and the same with the guitar, and I would just sit in my room and listen to like a Cure song, and then try to figure out what they're how they're playing that, and there is a couple of like very basic tunes that they've used in their music that I was able to figure out how to play on the guitar even, and stuff like that without any kind of like schooling or anything.
That's awesome.
um so yeah, like I've just kind of always had an ear for certain things, and so I just like felt like like this is kind of a sign, like maybe I should try to like do something music wise and make something and try to like continue to use this little bit of natural ability that I might have and try to see what I can do with it, kind of thing. So
Hey, you are never too old to pursue any hobby or passion ever.
and again, technology has made it so easy. I mean, the radio show that I listen to, they're doing running ads for some program where you pay like monthly, and you can literally get um like you get video like teaching or video classes and learning how to do certain things, like everything from tennis to music. Like you can get video like step by step of how Serena Williams, like her routine of how she improved on playing tennis and getting better at it, and you can watch that, and then the next video you could watch like how to play guitar, being taught by, whatever famous person, or, like it's, there and YouTube alone. I mean, like if so, a lot of times now, if people want to fix something or need to fix something at home, you can look it up on YouTube, and chances are there's a video showing you how to fix something yourself. So it's like we technology has made it so much more easy, and things like so much more access to how to do things, and be it hobbies or things that you maybe want to know for a job or something,
Yeah.
so
There's almost like there's no anything you can imagine is on
yeah.
YouTube. Has been somebody's had the same question, somebody's worried, somebody's wondering the same thing.
Yep. So
Well, Jesse, is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners? I know we
um
covered a lot of.
yeah, I've kind of I've tried to sneak some little things, that I
I
just kind
know
of off the top of my head in. So
1v1s. I think 1v1s with anybody could go on forever because people have
yeah,
the interest. You know.
it definitely was like when, we did a couple of those first ones, and it was fun, and it was exciting to get to just sit down with people, and like, and just kind of talk with stuff, and wherever the conversations goes, you just kind of go with it, like a natural, like it happens in the real world.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, I really appreciate your taking the time to sit down with me and with listeners and to share all this because, like you had, I think you had mentioned it. I don't know if you mentioned it off air or on this recording, but you do have an older 1v1, but
Hmm.
we're trying to reintroduce the founders of Boss Rush
Hmm.
Homes. So I'm really excited for listeners to get to know you better. I've enjoyed this because I haven't had
Hmm.
a chance to really chat with you
Yeah.
from a few, Twitter messages and a recording
Yeah.
or there with Boss Rush.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's, that's been the hard part about this is I've loved, like this our group growing, but at the same time working third shift, it's like I'm not around. I don't get to be around when everyone's recording their stuff and get to join in on the fun because this was fun doing this with you and I was definitely looking forward to it because I would like to get to have more conversations with the people that have joined us and stuff and who are doing such an awesome job. So, like this was definitely a pleasure for me as well. So,
Thank you for helping to foster that positive community.
yeah, I'm very proud of where we're at. I think we've got some awesome fun people in our group that I just absolutely look forward to listening to the shows and stuff when I can and that's podcast. It's gotten so out of control for me. It's like 40. I think I have like 40 podcasts on my podcast player that I that I will jump between, and so I get so overwhelmed sometimes because I'm like, I really want to listen to this, but I also really want to listen to this. God, I wish there was more time in the day.
I know what you mean. Like, oh my gosh, could I have more ears somehow?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Jesse, where can people find you if they'd like to follow you?
You can find me on Twitter, on Xbox, on SoundCloud, on there's a new place that I actually put my album that I made in the past up called The Intervention. It's a story basically told through music without any I mean there's clips. I've taken audio clips from movies or shows or whatever is kind of like things that are mixed into the music, but there's no like actual lyrics. But it basically the short is it's basically it tells a story of a version of Earth that has gotten so out of control from global warming and things like that and just been so neglected that it's basically on its way out and how humans and had just been completely ignoring it and it got to the point of where these extraterrestrials or whatever, aliens
Mhm.
from outer space that I call the keepers, have decided that they had to intervene and have an intervention and stop things from getting worse and it's kind of a whole sci-fi thing, but like the titles of the between the titles of the songs and kind of the sound and feel of each song is kind of different and kind of the best I could like tried to capture some form of feeling or emotion in the music. And so that you can actually download it. There's a new place. It's called soundclick.com
Hmm.
and you can go there and it should be for free. I think there's like options that I can actually make it if I wanted to. I can make it where people have to pay to download my album, but um that's kind of my first one. It's not really what I'm doing this for to try to make any money. Um so I just left it where it's free and then I think like if you want to you can donate or whatever money. You can choose how much you want to pay for it. I don't really expect anyone to pay for it. I'd rather they just listen to it and get feedback. So yeah, and it's Phantom NXS on all those things. So basically almost anywhere you can find me as Phantom NXS.
Okay, great. That's really easy to remember. It's
Yeah.
Phantom with the letters in excess.
Yep, and it's all one, all one thing. There's no spaces between the N and the X and the S, but those are all three of those at the end are capitalized. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. And I really look forward to listening to more of your music and engaging with you more. And I'm really excited for listeners to get to know you better. They've heard you on the shows, they've seen you on the shows. Now they get to, hey, let's go behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah, get a little peek.
Well, thank you again so much, Jesse. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And the listeners, you can find us on bossrushgames.com. You can find us on Boss Rush Podcast, on Twitter, and probably, I think everywhere else. Instagram, YouTube. Twitter's the best way to keep up with everything. But until next time, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.
Bye.